Welcome to Unauthorized Access, the podcast that's focused on the human side of cybersecurity. Today, I am super excited to introduce the world, which is probably 12 of my followers, to Kaitlin Clemens, who recently joined Troutman Pepper's Incidents and Investigations team. Kaitlin, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast, but also, even more importantly, as part of the team.
Me too. I'm so excited to be here. I can't believe, right before we started, we talked about it's been almost a month and it's been amazing. It's flown by, but I also feel like I've just always been home here already. It's wonderful.
Kaitlin, we feel the exact same way, and the world should know that the moment that I met you, I already knew that you were meant to be part of this team just because you have a kindness in you that I really love, and your personality really shines through. And honestly, I knew we were a match made in heaven the moment we met. Kaitlin, I'm sure prior to joining Troutman, I'm assuming that this podcast was the number one thing that you listened to. So you know all about it. It was, right? Okay, perfect. The whole point of this podcast is to highlight people. Like what we do is highlight the people in incident response and cybersecurity. And before you came on, I heard so many wonderful things about you. And so I could go on and on about everything that I've heard, but I wanted this to be a chance for people to hear from you. And you probably have been able to tell that very often never talk about work. And I'm just interested in all your personal life and everything else. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and even beyond your professional life, because I'm very nosy and I like to know everything.
Well, likewise, our first conversation very much revolved around our kids and eating pancakes or croissants. So I knew immediately that I wanted to come over to the team.
That's true. Yeah.
From a professional standpoint, I transitioned to incident response and cybersecurity about 4 or 5 years ago. Before that, I was in plaintiff-side litigation doing catastrophic injury and medical malpractice, things like that. And I've always known that I wanted to do something kind of in crisis management. In law school, as nerdy as it sounds, I wanted to be a mediator. That's all I wanted to do. And then I realized very quickly that being a mediator is not a thing. You do that on the side. But I was really into no-fault compensation schemes, which sounds crazy. But I think what I ultimately learned, incident response kind of just fell in my lap, and it was a new opportunity. And I realized that I wanted to kind of be the calm for people in the storm and really kind of help people in their worst moments in their professional careers a lot of times. And it gets really personal with incident response too. So I transitioned. I really loved the job, and it's chaotic. It's insane sometimes, but I just really felt at home and I just kind of grew into it. So I was at a incident response firm that did a lot of it, and that's all we really did. I was there for 4 years, made partner then transitioned here to Troutman. So that's kind of how I came here.
And we're going to get all into your path into cybersecurity, but I need to go back to your child. Most important, very importantly, we skipped right over that. So tell us more about him.
So I have a 15-month-old. His name is Callum. He is a feral heathen, but he's also super fun. We buy our rotisserie chicken for him every single week. So he eats everything.
Okay, very good.
But yeah, it's just my weekends and nights are my husband and I just hanging out with Callum, and it's been the most fun. Motherhood is an insane time. He was born a little early, so we went through all of that, but he's so much fun. He's into everything. He climbs everything. Won't leave our poor dog Molly alone, but yeah, he's the best.
Kim, there's probably a lot of attorneys, and we've talked about this on the podcast too, about caregiving and cybersecurity. Actually, there was a podcast right before this one that Sherry Davidoff was on, and it was focused specifically on this. It is, especially given our practice in incident response, right? It's a demanding job. If anyone says anything differently, they're lying. It is a demanding job and it requires a lot of you, and it's really not something you can plan for. But I want to know, what are your strategies or your tips? Do you feel like you've been able to balance both? What are you working on? Or what thoughts do you have when it comes to making sure you're fully and wholly there for Callum, but also making sure that you're doing, the best that you can and bringing your best self to work?
It's not easy. It's incredibly difficult. I'm still working on it. I think the most important thing is to find your people. Find the people who understand and get it. I've been very fortunate throughout my career to find incredibly supportive people. And now that I'm here at Troutman with you, Sadia, it's just I mean, I know we've been on calls. You say, oh my gosh, it's 5:30 Eastern time. Do you want to go out and play with Callum? And I'm like, no, we're good. We're good.
Yes, you absolutely do want to go outside and play with Callum. Yes, that's what I want someone to say to me.
Yeah, and I do. But I think it's really important to have your people at work. And I'm very fortunate to have an incredibly supportive husband and spouse. He knows how important my career is and how seriously I take my work. And I think that's really, really important. But the balance is then when I do have the times to breathe in those moments, and I know that there's not something on fire happening, I have my phone nearby, but I'm not constantly checking it. And I have an hour and a half every day after daycare to spend with Callum and focus on him. Sometimes I'm by myself because my husband Drew is in healthcare. So he has a crazy schedule. So some nights I'm putting Callum down by myself. And I'm like, I have 90 minutes. Just focus these 90 minutes and then I can get back to work. And I usually do afterwards. Again, it's not easy. I do break that rule sometimes, but it's been working so far. So we'll see. I'll let you know if I want anything
We'll let you know how it
else.
goes. There's, it reminds me, like, I feel like so far what I've set up for myself is like, I try to work early in the morning so that I could have that time. But I think at least I struggle with it. Like the job is very consuming, right? Sometimes I almost feel like it becomes like addictive, right? Like you're just constantly like, what's going on in my inbox? And like, this is when I'm like the worst mom in the world is when my 3-year-old, like when she's talking to me and I'll be like looking at something and she'll say something like, no, mama, talk to me. Oh my God, my heart breaks. I'm like, oh my God. And that's for me is like, okay, I need to stop because like a 3-year-old is like realizing it. And it's like, I'm still working on that. Like trying to give myself, no, this is 100% of my time I'm going to give to you. When I can, I'm going to give it to you. And it's easier to say than to actually do it. But I feel like it's something a lot of people still struggle with, but I 100% agree that the people make it easier. And like, I'm happy to hear like so many people did it for me. And then Ron did it for me. Ron did it for me. Like he did that again. I can never have a podcast without saying something wonderful about him because he did so much for me. And I don't even think he realizes it, but like that, letting me be a mom and letting me prioritize that is actually, it makes me a better attorney. It makes me more invested in my job. It makes me want to show up here as opposed to somebody, saying that, that I'm being less or I'm not showing up all or fully or completely. It inspires me to do more when someone actually pushes me to go be with my kid. And so I'm glad from the 30 days that you've been here. Hopefully it's not just a honeymoon, I promise. Like I said this at the beginning and I say this to everyone that like, I want to do for you what I hope everyone would do for me. And so hopefully that'll continue. Your path about cybersecurity, you know what? It just fell in your lap. I need to comment about that because I think Caitlin, I'm not calling us old because I'm very young. Not, but like I think that like that's everyone's path is that it just fell into our lap, right? Like we didn't actually wake up and think we were going to be IR attorneys. We somehow, if you talk to like the incoming classes, all of them actually woke up and they're like, no, I'm going to be a privacy attorney. It's a totally different shift. Like they were planning for this and they took classes about this.
It's crazy to me. So I really liked IP when I was in law school, but I don't have a science background. I knew I was never going to be in patent prosecution. Like patent litigation was even difficult because you need that science background and it would have been a really difficult road. So they always said, it's going to be a long path for you if that's what you want to do. Try to meander, get some litigation experience. And so that was always my end goal. And then I saw incident response and privacy kind of as an IP adjacent. And that's what convinced me to go that path. And then I fell in love with it and I'm here and I don't see myself leaving it. So it is kind of crazy to see that there's now courses being taught in IR. It's insane to me.
You teach an excellent course in IR. First of all, I think the world probably knows this about you, and this is part of it, is like you are an excellent teacher and an excellent trainer. And I'll just say, this is probably going to sound like a podcast where I'm just like bragging about the Troutman team. But yes, that's exactly what I feel like doing is like even things that you coming up. I think it's very important to learn from one another. Right. And there's things that you've learned at your prior firm, things that, you guys may have done differently, things that we do differently. Right. But bringing in and making it like the best of both worlds. Like, I think there's always room for growth. And I just love, like a lot of times on calls that like, I love watching you in action. One, because I'm like, I have this like complex in me. I'm like, oh, if I don't know what you're going to think of me. But I'm just like, I love learning I love watching you in action because in my mind I'm like, oh, these are good things, right? And hopefully at some point you'll feel that about me too. I don't know. I love that about your training, and maybe that's some of the momness in you comes out too, right? You have a very motherly nature, and so I think that's I don't know how I got onto the topic, but you do an excellent training job.
Thank you.
Okay,
I mean, I also just fangirled over you on your CCPA explanation. So I clearly am a huge fan. And I told you should be a teacher.
Yeah, that is like a secret skill set I have that I can quote any section of the CCPA. I've tried many times to leave that life behind me, but I don't think it's ever going to end because honestly, I love it. Like at the end of the day, like even when I try to shift some of the privacy compliance work, because this is how I explain myself. Like I am very good at privacy compliance, but I love incident response. And truthfully, I try to do the things that I love. But once you get me in the privacy compliance zone, like I'm totally into it. I'm totally into it. And I can't really shake that part off me. If I ever had a choice though, between an IR matter and a compliance matter, I would always pick the IR matter. I know the part of your job that you love. And it's like just so shocking to me. It's like data file analysis. For the love of me, like, my hatred towards spreadsheets, Excel. It's just not something, but like you love it. You absolutely love playing with data. And actually, it's a very nice compliment to this group, right? Like, I didn't know how much I needed you until I realized how much joy you have in doing that part of the response. Is there any part of it that you could do without in the IR world? Like, is there some part of the job that you really just don't like?
How do I say this? The manufactured chaos that comes with incident response. Like there's the chaos, right? There's the threat actor communications that's just so unpredictable and it's a very high stressor for anybody. There's just the beginning of an incident response matter drives me insane because my urge is always to silo and organize and get everybody. It's herding cats sometimes. And that's nothing against the client or vendors. It's just the nature of it. So that like herding cats aspect in the beginning drives me a little nuts. But it's something that I also, on the other hand, I do enjoy it because it's fun to guide everybody through that. And again, being the calm in the storm, it's just there's a lot of things happening at once. I get very honed in at that point, and that's when the rest of the world kind of disappears. I get very focused on the job. So it's both a part that I could do without, but also love because it's just once you put in the work in the beginning to get everybody prepared and get all your work streams organized, I mean, that's crucial for any incident response. So.
And when you said manufactured chaos, what I actually thought about, I guess I would say like the unnecessary chaos, right? Like, for example, you and me have been on matters where it's just like some personalities, like stop being difficult for no reason, where we don't need to be difficult. Like just, the goal, we're all working in the same direction, even if we have different work streams. It's the unnecessary complications that come along the way. And some of that is part of the herding cats, making sure people are responding because in our roles, I feel like that's our job following up along the way is if everyone could just also equally just be working on that path, it would make it a lot. And so it's like the unnecessary things that I think that I just feel like, having to keep moving people back. And, this is a podcast. So all these things I'm doing with my hands, Kaitlin, no one's going to see.
Oh, yeah. And I'm nodding too. I've just realized that I'm nodding and smiling and I'm like not making any noise.
No. For like all like whatever, how many listeners, me and Kaitlin, we have lots of facial expressions, lots of things with our hands, but you're not going to be able to see any of this. But you should know we're smiling and laughing. So if I remember you had mentioned that croissants and pancakes and we bonded over that. It's because my life truly revolves around eating. What's usually all I'm thinking about most of the time is even when I'm eating, what am I going to be eating next? It's just where my brain goes. And so I need to know I'm coming to Philly soon. Andrew is going to accept our invite at some point to have dinner with us. And then I'm going to come and we're going to eat at your most favorite place in the world in Philly. I guess that's not true. Your favorite place in Philly. So what is it?
So it's a tie. My favorite restaurant that I would go to for like a night out would be kind of Cuba Libre. It's in Old City. I guess you consider it Old City. It's amazing. You go in and it's this magical, the atmosphere is so gorgeous. It turns into a salsa dancing club, I think on like a Thursday night, but it has the best Cuban food I've ever had. And it's just incredible. So Cuba Libre really tops the list. South Philly Barbacoa is also really good. And if anybody has ever seen the story of Christine the chef, she's on Chef's Table. She's amazing. South Philly Barbacoa is also wonderful, but I don't know if it's where we can sit down. It has picnic tables outside. So I don't know if that would work with.
Okay, you and me will go there. That won't be where we get Andrew. But Cuba Libre, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Cuba Libre.
Cuba Libre. Okay, what is your favorite meal there? I like, this is the level of detail I need to know.
Oh, man. So I haven't been to Cuba Libre since before Callum. The ceviche is phenomenal. And I'm trying to think of what else I have there. I usually go during restaurant week, quite honestly. So they have different stuff every time. And as we're doing this, I'm looking up the menu because I need to tell you this.
People can't see you. I see you doing that.
I know. No, this is very important because I can't leave you hanging.
Yeah, I know.
On what is the crab guacamole is really good. The vaca frita is what I usually get, is the braised brisket. Really, really good. White rice, black beans. It's phenomenal.
Okay, is this close to the Beasley office? Because that's where we're going, you know?
I don't think so.
Okay, we'll still go there. This is a public announcement for Andrew that's where we're going, and we're having the brisket. I also want everyone to know that I gave Kaitlin a whole 2 minutes to prepare for this podcast, all of these questions, but I told you that the time goes by very fast, and here we are almost to the end. I like to end these podcasts with, and I care a lot about, I like this industry because of the people. Like, we have a lot of good friends, a lot of connections. And so the last question I want to end with is, if you could highlight anyone in our industry, either because you think that they're just so good at their job, or they're just a very nice human, you just love them, whatever it is, for whatever reason, who would you highlight and why?
So in line with the data analytics trend, Jenna Rooney over at Arete is phenomenal. I've worked with her multiple times. She was one of the first people to congratulate me on the move over here. She's just a good human being, and we've nerded out about data analytics on calls on very complicated matters. And I just really enjoy working with her. So she's one that I would call out.
Okay, you are so right. She did. She reached out too and congratulated me about you. And I'm like, yes, I was like, nobody is more excited than me having Kaitlin come over. And so I fully agree. And so maybe Jenna, maybe this will be public announcement for Jenna that we need you on the podcast, because that's how we pass it along. Kaitlin, I know I say it I think I say it very often. I want you to know how happy I am to have you on this team. And I talk to all of our associates and the rest of, the other partners here, and your personality shines through. And I have been very intentional about growing this group, and I want it to be with people that I love and that I can relate to and just have that kindness in them. And that is 100% you. So I just want to say we are so happy to have you here. And even this was basically a regular conversation you and me have every day.
I was just going to say, this
doesn't feel like we just recorded a podcast. This feels like this is exactly what we spoke about this morning. And I'm very excited for hopefully many, many, many more years of this to come. So welcome to the team, and thank you for making time to be on the podcast.
Of course. And I feel the absolute same. It has been a pretty seamless transition for me. I've just never felt more welcomed and loved. And like I said, I fangirl over you and the team.
I want you to find better people to fangirl over. But yes, I want you to aspire to bigger, better things. But thank you.
Yeah, so thanks for having me.
Thank you for everyone listening. I hope you subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you.
Copyright Troutman, Pepper, Hamilton, Sanders, LLP. These recorded materials are designed for educational purposes only. This podcast is not legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individual participants. Troutman Pepper does not make any representations or warranties, express or implied, regarding the contents of this podcast. Information on previous case results does not guarantee a similar future result. Users of this podcast may save and use the podcast only for personal or other non-commercial educational purposes. No other use, including, without limitation, reproduction, retransmission, or editing of this podcast may be made without the prior written permission of Troutman Pepper. If you have any questions, please contact us at troutman.com.